Conservative government cut taxes, balance budgets, deliver affordable homes, and crack down on crime and corruption. He shepherded the Accountability Act through the House of Commons to protect taxpayers from waste, fraud, and corruption. When he was housing minister, the average home cost $450,000, and the average one-bedroom rent was just $970. People could afford homes in safe neighborhoods and good food on their table. As vice chair of the Commons Finance Committee, he was the first major voice in Parliament to warn that massive money-printing deficits would lead to inflation, while Mark Carney wrongly predicted prices would go down. Pierre also led the charge against the carbon tax, toughened laws to fight crime, banning drugs, and unlocking resources. Liberals who demonized him for these principled stands have now all agreed he was right and claim to agree with him. In the most recent election, he got more votes than any Conservative leader in our history, the largest share of votes since 1988, adding 2.5 million more votes and 25 more seats than the prior election, all with major gains among youth and working people. But he has only just begun. After Liberals doubled housing costs, inflated food prices, and unleashed crime on our streets, Pierre is fighting back. His purpose is a Canada with strong take-home pay, safe streets, and secure borders in a self-reliant country. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Canada's next Prime Minister, Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much to the great Aaron Gunn. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Tout d'abord, j'aimerais dire que c'est un plaisir, un grand plaisir d'être ici en Colombie-Britannique. Quelle belle province qu'on a ici, et surtout avec la grande victoire canadienne d'hier soir. Nous sommes tous fiers de notre équipe canadienne et une grande félicitation des joueurs. Nous avons besoin d'un gouvernement qui est capable de livrer comme ça, un gouvernement d'excellence comme nous avons eu auparavant. Ici en Colombie-Britannique, on avait une belle promesse pour tous les Canadiens historiquement, que travailler fort vous donne une belle vie, une maison, une hypothèque que vous pouvez payer et rembourser, d'épicerie et de l'essence abordable, des rues sécuritaires, que peu importe vos origines. Travailler fort vous donne cette opportunité. Mais après 11 ans des libéraux, le coût du logement a explosé. Le coût de nourriture est maintenant inabordable. Les gens ne peuvent même pas acheter de l'essence. Le nombre de personnes qui doivent faire recours aux banques alimentaires a doublé. Mark Carney a promis qu'il allait renverser tout ce qu'il avait dit et tout ce que son parti avait fait dans les 10 ans précédents. Mais après 1 an et demi comme premier ministre, c'est quoi les résultats pour vous? Est-ce que vous pouvez acheter de nourriture de façon abordable? Est-ce que votre loyer est tombé? Est-ce que vos paiements hypothécaires sont moins élevés? La réponse est non, il n'y a pas de résultat. Après 1 an et demi de Mark Carney et 11 ans des libéraux, c'est plus de coûts, plus de crimes, plus de corruption, plus de la même chose. Il faut que ça change avec un nouveau gouvernement conservateur qui va rendre la vie abordable chez nous, sécuritaire chez nous et rendre le Canada maître chez nous. Thank you very much for having us here today with the incredible Jamie Schmale, our Shadow Minister for Indigenous-related issues. We have Aaron Gunn, documentarian, a renowned documentarian and member of Parliament in North Island, Powell River. Stephen Curran, North Vancouver Capilano candidate for the Conservatives in the forthcoming election, a businessman and a lawyer. And Elaine Allen, a businesswoman and a Conservative candidate for Vancouver Centre. First of all, it is great to be here in beautiful British Columbia. This barely a day after the spectacular victory of Team Canada, the first ever in the World Cup. An amazing congratulations to our players. We're so proud of them. They showed teamwork, excellence, hard work, grit, determination, and class. And that's what we deserve from our government, a government that gets things done, that gets results. A government that will allow Canadians to do what our soccer team did yesterday, which is to get ahead through their own hard work, have the benefits of their work pay off for them. And that's the country we had. We used to be a country where if you worked hard, you got great things. You got a nice house that you owned and a mortgage you could pay off, with groceries you could afford, a tank of gas that you could put in your nice new vehicle, and you could leave that car out in your driveway without fear of it being stolen. And next to that driveway was a little patch of lawn where your kids could throw the ball around without worry of crime. Our streets were safe, our country was affordable. But after 11 years of Liberals, all of that promise is broken. Life costs more. Work doesn't pay. Housing costs have nearly doubled. Vancouver now has the second most expensive housing market anywhere in North America. We've seen the cost of food rise faster than in any country in the G7. And we'd all hoped that Mark Carney would be a different kind of Liberal, that he would reverse the disastrous, costly, soft-on-crime policies that his party had created with his support. And I even offered to help Mark Carney. I told him to steal my policies, and it seemed promising. He promised that he would reverse everything he'd been saying and that his party had done in the prior decade. It was, on behalf of Mr. Carney, I have to say, it was beautiful, a beautiful illusion. After a year and a half of Mark Carney, we're seeing that none of the results he promised are coming true in your life. Now is the time for Canadians to look at their lives and ask, are you better off after a year and a half of Mark Carney? Are your groceries more affordable? Has your rent come down? How's your mortgage payment compared to a decade ago? Are you more or less safe in your neighborhood? In reality, the answer is that people are worse off. Life costs more and it is more dangerous. Under Mark Carney, it's more crime, more costs, more drugs, more of the same. Mark Carney is just another Liberal. Years of soft-on-crime Liberal policies have let criminals and gangsters, extortionists and others walk free and wreak havoc on our once safe streets. Since the Liberals took power, extortion is up 481%, violent crime 50%. We've seen 117 extortion attempts so far in 2026, and the year is still young. That's up 1,570% since a year ago. That means under Carney, extortions are up 1,570% here in British Columbia. In May, Surrey police charged a 22-year-old with over a dozen offenses of extortion, arson, and firearms. We see violent instances across the province. Despite Mark Carney's tough talk and his weak, watered-down bill that has received inaccurate praise from the Liberal media, bail is still far easier to get than ever before. In fact, Liberal bail remains in place. The same revolving door remains, and in fact, Mark Carney's Bill C-68 makes it worse by granting judges the power to ignore mandatory prison time for rape, extortion, and other serious violent offenses. I met a lady at the airport the other day who told me that she moved from Vancouver to Mexico so that she would feel more safe. Let that sink in. She feels more safe in Mexico than in Vancouver. Yesterday, I talked to a very successful young entrepreneur in his 30s who's moving to Florida, not just because he feels unsafe in Toronto, but because he can't afford to pay the taxes there. Mexico, by the way, going back to Mexico, is not in a recession. Canada is. So if it's just about tariffs, why are the Mexicans able to avoid a recession while Mark Carney is not? In fact, of all the G20 countries, these are the 20 most industrialized countries, 19 of them are not in a recession. One is, and that's the Mark Carney economy here in Canada. Why is it that only Canada under Mark Carney is in a recession? If it's really global factors, wouldn't all 20 be in recession? It's not one measurement alone that shows that we're in recession. It's countless. 3 of the last 4 quarters, Canada's economy has shrunk. We're the only economy in the G20 that has had that happen. In fact, the GDP of Canada today is smaller than it was the day Justin Trudeau left office. That is not true of any other G20 country. But it's not just statistics. Every quarter of economic decline means people losing sleep over bills, struggling to fill their fridges, and worrying about losing their jobs. 1.5 million Canadians missed a major debt payment in the first 3 months of the year. Insolvencies are up 19% year over year, hitting a 17-year high. Almost a quarter of British Columbians report they have lived in food insecurity. In fact, food insecurity is up 73% in British Columbia since 2019. Today, nearly a quarter of Canadians have experienced poverty. 40% lay awake at night, have literally told pollsters they're losing sleep because of their finances. Grocery prices continue to rise despite announcement after announcement, illusion after illusion from the Carney Liberals. Just 2 months ago, the Prime Minister claimed affordability is the best it's been in a decade. But from January to May, there were 15,000 GoFundMe campaigns from people needing help from their fellow Canadians just to pay for the basics. That's up 8%. And Mark Carney did a photo op yesterday on housing. Isn't that incredible, the irony that he did it yesterday, just as Rate Hub came out and reported that, and I'm quoting, affordability conditions worsened in all Canadian housing markets in May. So while he's doing announcements and creating illusions, Rate Hub reports that Canadians are getting less affordable housing. Now, it was reported recently that right here in BC, an 87-year-old man has to live in a Tim Hortons. Can you imagine trying to sleep in a Tim Hortons on one of those metal chairs, your head leaning against those cold glass windows, listening to coffees being served and doors opening and slamming all night long? This cannot go on. Our biggest export can no longer be Mark Carney's speeches. Canadians cannot eat re-announced Liberal promises. Symbolic signing ceremonies of meaningless MOUs don't pay people's mortgages. Illusions don't fill people's gas tanks. We need to get back to reality. And the reality is that nothing has changed if you look past the announcements and the feel-good photo ops. Nothing has changed in your life. Mark Carney has doubled Trudeau's deficits, is spending 5% more year over year, kept every anti-development law in place, is increasing the industrial carbon tax 6 times higher than Trudeau's. There are 500 projects awaiting federal approval, while Mark Carney holds photo ops to celebrate just 1 or 2. But Conservatives are fighting back. We want to restore Canada's promise that hard work gets you a great life with a nice house that you own and a mortgage you can pay down, food that you can afford, a car that you can gas on a safe street under our proud flag. We want a Canada that's affordable at home, self-reliant at home, and safe at home. That's why we're calling for the scrapping of all gas taxes for all of the year to save Canadians $1,200 between now and Christmas. $20 a fill-up and 25 cents a litre. We should eliminate GST on all used cars. The car's already been taxed. Get rid of the double tax to make it more affordable for people to buy that used car. We want to unlock and unblock our industry by getting rid of the industrial carbon tax, and we want to protect your home and your property. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Property rights and home ownership have been under threat after the BC Supreme Court found that Aboriginal title takes priority over fee simple title. Last August, BC Supreme Court made this ruling threatening 800 acres and $1 billion of real estate and creating a precedent that could threaten almost every single homeowner in British Columbia if other Indigenous tribes make the same claim. And what did the federal Liberals do? Because this is a federal lawsuit that is aimed at the federal government. This Liberal government put in place Litigation Directive 14, which prohibits federal lawyers from arguing that your home and your small business property takes precedence over any other claim. Litigation Guideline 14 literally bans our lawyers from defending your home and making the necessary arguments. Instead, Liberals showed up at court making small technical arguments that the judge easily threw out. The judge, in fact, noticed that the Liberals had not argued for the extinguishment of all other claims in the event of fee simple property when she made her ruling. So that's why we brought this to the attention of Mark Carney. He claimed he was going to be different. So we assumed that he would change this Liberal litigation directive. We were wrong. He voted in the House of Commons to keep that directive in place, and on the government's website today, he is still instructing his lawyers not to argue that your home title comes first over all other claims. There are real consequences even while this is an appeal. $100 million financing in Richmond was recently turned down by lenders because of the ruling. Prime Minister to claim that he disagrees with the Cowichan ruling while he bans his own lawyers from making the necessary arguments to overturn it is dishonest. But it gets worse. Carney Liberals are now signing agreements that further risk your home and your property. Now the Liberals are set to ratify a new treaty. The Comox First Nation and the BC government have signed this treaty, which says that UNDRIP is the authoritative source of all its interpretations. As it is well known, especially here in BC, UNDRIP threatens Canada's parliamentary sovereignty, rule of law, resource development, and property rights. The BC government has already found itself in high-profile court cases because it has adopted UNDRIP through the DRIPA law. By implementing an agreement that appeals to UNDRIP as the authoritative source, the Carney Liberals would elevate UNDRIP from policy commitment to legally binding guideline, threatening your home and threatening resource projects. Further, the Comox Treaty also refers to itself as a living agreement, meaning that it will never be settled, that it could be renegotiated with more and more demands for decades to come. Enough is enough. Conservatives support the opportunities and the rights of Indigenous people. We want Indigenous Canadians to have the chance to have great lives with clean drinking water, with home ownership, with the chance to build businesses and enrich their people. But that cannot happen by taking away the property rights or blocking the resource development of other British Columbians and Canadians. Instead, we need Comox agreement to be put on hold. The Comox Treaty fails to explicitly and clearly protect property rights, something Conservatives have called for as a prerequisite for all future treaties. And it's something that we need to do in light of the ruling by Cowichan, the Cowichan ruling, and the Musqueam Rights Recognition Agreement. So we're worried that this is going to lead to 10 or 15 or maybe even 20 years of confusion and uncertainty that threatens the stability of British Columbia's economy. This treaty will have to come before the federal parliament for approval, and that is why I'm announcing today that Conservatives will stand up for property rights, for your home, for economic development, for our economy, and for affordability by voting against the Comox Treaty. And we encourage all British Columbians to contact your Member of Parliament and ask them to join Conservatives in defending your home by opposing the Comox Treaty. Send a message. That is what we're saying to British Columbians today. Send a message to the Liberal government in Ottawa that it is time to defend your home, your property, your economy, your pocketbook by opposing this treaty. Send your Member of Parliament a message that they should vote in the House of Commons for your home and your benefit. Send a message that enough is enough. We need to protect all Canadians. Conservatives will fight for an agreement that respects Indigenous concerns, provides certainty and finality, but explicitly defends property rights and, more importantly, rejects UNDRIP. Because we know that we must restore hope for all Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous alike, that anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, that hard work gets you a great life, an affordable home and food, a safe street under our proud flag. Thank you very much. Let's keep the fight alive. All right.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from reporters. Please identify yourself and your outlet. One question each.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. If you can answer in English and French. Dan Burrett from CBC. Geopolitically, the Prime Minister has praised the deal to end the U.S.-Iran war as a, quote, game changer that has exceeded his expectations. What do you think of the deal?
Well, our bottom line is that the theocratic and genocidal regime in Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It would be a threat to us all. A couple of observations. First of all, Mark Carney had no role in this agreement. He shouldn't be trying to take credit for something he did not do. That would be an illusion. Second of all, Mark Carney's got to start focusing on protecting Canadians, including Canadians of Persian descent, here at home. Media have reported there are, researchers have found that there are 700 IRGC agents operating on Canadian soil with impunity. The Carney Liberals have deported only one. Just last week, we found out that a foreign government was likely involved in sponsoring multiple shootings on Canadian soil. I can tell you from meeting with the Persian community in Canada, they are terrified that these terrorists are roaming our streets, using the millions of dollars they plundered from the Iranian people. And meanwhile, what has Mark Carney done? He's only deported 1 out of 700. That means at least 699 are here. He still hasn't implemented the foreign agent registry, which would identify these agents. And he's not even ensuring that new terrorists do not come into the country. So it's time for Mark Carney to stop grandstanding at global summits about agreements in which he had no part and start doing his job here at home to deport the 699 IRGC terrorists, to make sure no more of them come in, to set up the foreign agency registry, and to seize all the assets of Iranian regime thugs that we can get our hands on and give that money to the victims of the terrorist attack on PS Flight 752. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Pour nous, les conservateurs, nous sommes contre l'idée que l'Iran ait une bombe nucléaire et il faut que l'entente empêche le gouvernement iranien islamique d'avoir accès aux armements nucléaires. Mais M. Carney doit, au lieu de donner des grands discours à l'échelle mondiale, il devrait être ici, chez nous, pour protéger les Canadiens contre les terroristes iraniens qui sont dans notre terre. Selon les recherches des chercheurs, il y a 700 agents du corps iranien islamique sur notre terre. M. Carney et son gouvernement ont expulsé juste un. Ça veut dire qu'il y a 699 qui restent ici chez nous, qui menacent notre population, Perses, Juifs et tous les Canadiens. Il n'y a même pas un registre des agents étrangers après 6 ans des promesses libérales. Il n'y a pas une déportation, une expulsion massive des terroristes de ce groupe. M. Carney doit renverser la tendance. Nous proposons d'expulser tous les agents de ce groupe terroriste, d'empêcher les nouveaux d'entrée, de mettre en place et en application le registre des agents étrangers pour qu'on puisse identifier ceux et celles qui sont ici menaçant notre sécurité. C'est assez des illusions, des grands discours. Mark Carney doit agir avec des résultats ici chez nous.
Bonjour M. Poilievre, Rosanna Tiranti de Radio-Canada. Avec la fin de session, les députés rentrent dans leur circonscription, ils rencontrent les électeurs. Pensez-vous que certains membres de votre caucus pourraient profiter de cette période pour réfléchir à leur avenir et penser à quitter le Parti conservateur pendant l'été? We'll need that answer in English too as well.
Moi, je crois que c'est un temps de parler aux gens des résultats dans la vie du vrai monde. Nos députés vont poser la question à leurs commettants. Comment ça va pour vous, votre coût d'épicerie, après 1 an et demi de Mark Carney? Le coût d'essence pour vous, dans votre vie, comment ça va? Le loyer et vos paiements hypothécaires, comment ça va pour vous, monsieur et madame tout le monde au Canada? Comment ça va la sécurité dans votre collectivité après 1 an et demi de Mark Carney? On a eu des grandes promesses, des grandes illusions, des grands discours. Mais c'est le temps de poser la question, c'est où les résultats dans les vies des vrais Canadiens après 1 an et demi de Mark Carney et 11 ans des libéraux? Celles sont des questions sur lesquelles on va se concentrer. Et j'encourage les médias de poser ces questions aussi. Parce que vous avez parlé, madame, de comment on va parler, qu'est-ce qu'on va faire pour l'été. J'encourage les médias de demander à monsieur et madame tout le monde comment ça va après 1 an et demi de monsieur Carney dans la vraie vie des mondes. Parce que vous offrez toujours des grandes couvertures de ces promesses, de ces annonces, mais jamais de ces résultats dans la vie de monsieur et madame tout le monde. Donc, je vous encourage, pour une fois, de faire ça. So the question was about our MPs going back for the summer. What I'm encouraging them to do is look constituents in the eye and say, how are the results for you, Mr. and Mrs. Canadian, in your life? after a year of Mark Carney? After a year of Mark Carney, are your groceries more affordable? After a year of Mark Carney, are your streets safer? After a year of Mark Carney, have your mortgage payments gone up or down? After a year of Mark Carney, is your job more or less secure? What is happening in the results for everyday people after a year and a half of Mark Carney? And the media was asking, what about the conversations Canadian will be having with our constituents? So I encourage the media to have those conversations with Canadians. Your viewers, listeners, and readers, ask them how their cost of living, their bank accounts, their gas and grocery prices are doing after a year of Mark Carney, so that we can actually focus on the real results for real people, rather than just the endless announcements, allusions, and gushing media praise that we get every single day. Why not ask how people are actually living and what results they're actually getting in their cost of living and the crime in their communities after a year and a half of Mark Carney?
Mr. Poilievre, it's Rob Buffin with CTV. I wanted to get your reaction to those who say you've been out a few times, including in Richmond several weeks ago, talking about the threat that people feel regarding private property rights and Indigenous title potentially trumping that. What do you say to those who characterize that as fear-mongering? And also, what are your thoughts on the way the BC government...
Who has said that?
Well, Premier Eby, when I asked him about his thoughts on this, had said that this was divisive politics. What's your response to that? I said, is this politicking? And he said it's not helpful to have this become a political issue. I wanted to get your reaction to that, and I also wanted to get your reaction to the way the BC government provincially has handled Indigenous rights. They're the only province that has incorporated UNDRIP into its legislation. The treaty you're referencing, obviously the BC government was involved in negotiating that.
Well, first of all, it is the Liberals and the NDP that have politicized this issue. They decided that they were going to adopt UNDRIP and DRIPA. And then they decided that both the Liberals and the NDP, federally and provincial, decided that they would not defend property rights in the court in the federal Cowichan case. By politicizing it, they have now threatened $1 billion of real estate in Richmond and a precedent that could threaten almost every homeowner in British Columbia. So my message to Mark Carney and David Eby, stop politicizing this. Vote against any treaties that adopt UNDRIP or that fail to protect fee simple property rights. It's time to put politics aside to defend your home and your property against the irresponsible behavior of Liberals and New Democrats.
Good morning, Sonia West. Good morning to everyone, and welcome again to Vancouver, Mr. Poilievre. Nice to see you. Recently, we heard in Barrie, Ontario, that they took down our Canadian flag and replaced it with a pride flag. My question for you is, Mark Carney recently announced $47 million for the 2SLGBTQI+ Community Fund. If I went out and interviewed a bunch of people on the street right now and I asked them, what is June? They would say Pride Month. Does anybody in Canada even know that June is also Men's Mental Health Month? I doubt that anybody knows that. However, many people don't realize this, and my question for you is, do you believe the government is placing more emphasis on symbolic politics and identity-based initiatives than on addressing the growing mental health challenges affecting Canadian men?
Well, first of all, I think there's so many months now that are dedicated to so many causes, it's kind of getting hard to even keep track of which month is for which cause or for which group. My view is we should treat everyone equally, regardless of their race, gender, sexual orientation, or any other irrelevant characteristic. Every Canadian should be treated absolutely equal under the law. I don't believe in dividing people into separate groups or defining them based on group identity. We need to recognize the inherent humanity of every individual. Or as Martin Luther King says, judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. So I also believe that it should be the Canadian flag at the top of Canadian flagpoles. That is when I'm Prime Minister, we will fly the Canadian flag. everywhere and always. We should never take down the Canadian flag for any reason. We have to be united now more than ever. I note that the other day there's a statue of Samuel de Champlain that was torn down. One of the great pre-Confederation contributors to what would eventually become Canada. Would we even have Canada without Samuel de Champlain? And they want to tear that down. It's time to stop tearing down statues, taking down flags. It's time to do the opposite. Let's erect our statues. Let's raise our flag. Let's tell our stories. Let's sing our songs. Let's be united for our country, all as equal citizens living free under the law.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
Oh my God, I don't even remember all the things I said. So, all right. Tout d'abord, il y a tellement de mois qui sont consacrés à une cause ou à une autre, ça devient difficile à savoir c'est quoi le mois actuel. Moi, je crois qu'on devrait traiter tout le monde comme un individu. Chacun devrait être égal sous la loi et que le gouvernement devrait traiter les gens comme individus et non pas des groupes identitaires. Les libéraux et le mouvement woke essaient de diviser des gens en groupes pour tourner une personne contre l'autre et gagner le pouvoir. Moi, je ne crois pas en ça. Moi, je crois qu'on devrait simplement traiter tous les gens comme des individus, reconnaissant leurs valeurs individuelles. On ne devrait jamais faire baisser le drapeau canadien. Le drapeau canadien devrait être en haut, partout au Canada. C'est comme ça qu'on va réinstaurer l'unité nationale de notre pays d'une mer à l'autre. C'est ça le message qu'on a vu hier et qu'on devrait donner vers l'avant pour le futur.
Hi, David Brett, New Westminster Times. The federal government is running slick ads right now touting mining, extraction of critical minerals and other minerals in Canada. Yet, the BC government has handed a virtual de facto veto over all mining projects to First Nations, sometimes leading to north of $1 billion settlements in agreements that are not transparently negotiated in front of the public. So there is a lot of mineral wealth in British Columbia. This is where a lot of the big projects are on deck to go into production and are supposedly being helped by the federal government to fast track them into production. So how do you react to the fact that there's this hold-up factor with First Nations? How would you propose to solve that problem?
First of all, no one should have a veto. That is clear. Even the Supreme Court has ruled that no one has a veto. They have a right to be consulted, but not a right to block projects. So both the Liberals and in Ottawa and the NDP in British Columbia have violated the constitutional principle that no one has a veto by adopting UNDRIP and DRIPA, which require free, prior, and informed consent. That is a recipe for log jamming basically every project in this country. So it's time for both the federal Liberals and the provincial NDP to get out of the way so that we can get building. Mark Carney's ads are all an illusion. While he claims that he no longer wants to block projects, there are 500 projects waiting for federal approval on Mark Carney's desk. 500. So the next time there's a great photo op that they've approved one project that's been already waiting for 7 years, remember there's 499 others that are waiting. What we need to do is scrap all the anti-development laws so that automatically and organically these projects can go ahead without waiting for political interference and bureaucratic red tape to happen. The reason why we are the only country in the G7 in a recession is because Mark Carney has kept in place every anti-development law and every industrial tax that Trudeau imposed. And until you scrap those laws, C-69, the West Coast shipping ban, the industrial carbon tax, we will not truly unlock the hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth we need for paychecks, for affordable food, and for our schools and hospitals.
Thank you. This concludes today's press conference.
All right. Thank you very much.